So as you think about the business that you're doing, how can you make money from stuff that is spilling off that you had never even thought about as a result of doing business? That's why I tell entrepreneurs, start the business, trust what peels off from it, what you learn. That could be the sawdust. I didn't call it sawdust at the time, right? I call it ancillary business from what you're doing. This business podcast, the Two Business Guys Mastermind, uncovers for you secrets and share tips and tricks to entrepreneurship as they mastermind on how to have startup, operational, and overall business success so that you can go on to get better results. Enjoy. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Now, the workshop today, we're going to be talking about the sawdust. How do you make money from the sawdust, air quotes, of your business? Right. So now, Rob, I don't know if you've ever cut wood, right? And then you saw at the end, your face is full of this stuff that came from having cut the wood.
Yep.
But when we think about the sawdust of your business, right? That's what's left over. So as you think about the business that you're doing, how can you make money from stuff that is spilling off that you had never even thought about as a result of doing business? That's why I tell entrepreneurs, start the business, trust what peels off from it, what you learn. That could be the sawdust. I didn't call it sawdust at the time, right? I call it ancillary business from what you're doing, the sawdust of your business. So let's jump into that. Let's give them a good workshop today, a good webinar today on how they can make money from the sawdust. Do you know what I mean by that concept?
I know exactly what you mean. The first time I ever learned about this was actually not from any type of business book or any of that type of stuff. I'm gonna take you back real quick. Do you remember the movie? Came out in the 90s, The Five Heartbeats.
Yeah, I'm too young for that. I don't. Yes, I do remember that movie. I think I made it by two.
There we go. Right. So for those of you all out there that don't know this movie, Robert Townsend wrote, directed, produced, starred in everything. This movie, it was a movie about a fictional 60s group, just like the Temptations, the Dells, the Whispers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And it was a movie that kind of looked at that whole era and gave the story of how all of those groups came up. It's generally a bunch of guys that knew each other, and then they sing and they doing all this type of stuff. So two of the guys in the band are brothers, and they're on stage and they're traveling, they're on the road, and one of the brothers is the older brother, and he's always just mistreating the younger brother, making him sleep in the hallway when he got a girl over, wearing his clothes, coming and showing up late, messing up the music, all types of different things. And so the brother's upset. Now, for some reason, he decides while on stage to start airing out these grievances. He's like, I'm tired of you stealing my clothes and wearing, doing all this and showing up late, and I ain't sleeping in the hallway no more, right? And so his older brother basically tells him to quit whining on stage. And he's like, "Oh, okay, I'm whining. I'm just a little punk, huh?" And so then they start fighting in the middle of a show on the stage, right? So that's the prologue. But the lesson comes when they pan to the wings and you see the manager and the choreographer of the group, two older World War II veterans. The choreographer, whose nickname was Sarge, you can imagine what his character was like, was immediately, hold my coat, I'm about to get them ready to go knock some heads. But the manager pulls him aside and says, no, calm down, Sarge, calm down.
Let them work that out.
They're fine, but we just got to teach them how to use everything they do, right? And he had this like stoic look of just wisdom and sagacity and just knowing that everything was going to be okay. And, it's set up perfectly because then in the next scene, they show them performing at another gig and they start getting into an argument. I'm tired of you messing up the moves, blah, 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 all the rest of that type of stuff. And then you see this sense where they're like, everybody, the whole show stops. Everybody's looking at it again, like, what's going on? They fighting again? And then he's like, the lead singer jumps out, is like, nah. And the character's name was Duck. He was like, Duck is right. If we ain't gonna do it right, we ain't gonna do it at all. And then so they go down, and he's like, "Pick down," and they have these strip off suits where they can then turn into, and this amazing show and all the rest type stuff. And they start singing the song the right way, and the crowd goes wild, and it's amazing. And of course, their ticket sales go up, and they start making more money because now they got this drama element to their show, right? And it was so interesting to me that concept of, he was like, there aren't any mistakes, there aren't any bad things, that you just have to learn how to use everything that you do, right? How to monetize, how to make everything that you do work for you instead of making it work against you. And that was for me, that was the moment where I was like, that's what we have to be able to do. And so, I mean, you're the monetize your life guy, right? Like, it's the same concept, but I
Yep.
remember learning it, and that was, like I said, in a movie. It wasn't even in business class or anything.
Yeah. And what's funny about that is, so I started thinking about, I was working with a guy out of Seattle yesterday and he's, fabulous coach in his own right. I told him, I says, hey, even coaches need coaches sometimes. Right. I says, even consultants need consultants, speak into them in an angle and from a perspective that you may not have been aware of. And so this guy is a fabulous content creator. Right. He says, oh man, I created this content. He's written like 9 books. And so as the monetize your life guy, my idea was like, okay, tell me something. I says, tell me the overall theme of your books. He said, what do you mean? I've written 9 different books. I was like, I said, because they came from you, they probably have a consistent
Central
theme,
thing. Yep.
right? A spine. And he says, I never thought about that. So I says, and if you create it from that central theme, you literally can use 9 books as 9 modules. And if you use the books as 9 modules, then you can literally dig into each book and pull out the material. It's already done. It becomes the sawdust of having done the books already, right?
Yep.
And he was like, oh man, I hadn't thought about that in that particular way. He says, I'm out banging out, all this content and all this kind of stuff. And I said, yeah, so the material's there. I said, now direct your crew or direct your what. And then I go into, it's either going to be a what or it's going to be a who, right? It's going to be a what? Software. I use software. So I say, from what I have, what can help me extend it, explode it, all these different things. Or it's a who. Do I got to get a virtual assistant? Do I got to get a chief of staff? So it's a what or a who and not a how anymore, right? Yep. I said, your how is happening. It's what you love. It's your superpower. So do more of that. Remove all the constraints, right? So my point here is that as you think about what you've created in your business, everyone out there, you think about what you've created in your business, think about what's being peeled off, right? What's being laid to the side. And I remember, Rob, I actually wrote a book from cast off start of stories, from papers that I wrote in school. And I put a nice little title, Right Where You Are. In other words, it was a writing book telling people whatever you've done, right where you are. Right. RITE.
Yep. WRITE.
Where you are. So I just compiled them. And then I called it I can't remember the name, what they call it when you have a whole bunch of different stories.
Anthology.
Exactly. Right. And I just said, hey, and it was out there making some money for me, but it's about what was cast off. It's about these little pieces, about these starts. I just put them in and then show people that could be something for you. That's the sawdust of your business. Right. And I guarantee you, what business do you know right now that you can identify, that you can look at and go, man, they're just peeling off all kind of stuff that they're not noticing? When you go into a manufacturing organization, right, and you're helping the leaders, do you notice stuff like that? Do you say, well, yeah, what's that talent over there doing?
I think a lot of times, for example, I'm working with an auto parts manufacturer, right, and they're one of the major ones in North America. And what's interesting is I'm working with a bunch of their leaders, and so this particular leader is from the IT division. So, right, a lot of this stuff is support stuff. It's not operations, it's support stuff. And most people, when they look at support stuff, it looks like it as if it's always a cost center, right? They're always looking at how it's costing the business to pay for it. They're never looking at, and nobody ever actually thinks about articulating how much benefit the business is getting for that. That's left to the finance guys or to the VP of that department to justify their department, right? And so I was talking to the young lady because she has a proposal because she wants to get some new software. They want to move some stuff to the cloud. And the interesting thing about it was, like, they're talking about all the benefits that it'll have for the team to move it to the cloud, but none of the benefits that it'll have for the business to move it toward the cloud, and not understanding that the benefits to the business can always be quantified, always, always, always,
Right.
can and should be quantified in terms of P&L, because that's how we judge businesses.
Exactly.
Businesses are not judged based on how good everybody feels. If everybody feels good and the business is going bankrupt, right? And it's not even just the quality, like, and I think that's the thing that people struggle with. They believe that it's either qualitative or quantitative, and that's not the key, right? Qualitative data, how people feel, is important, but understand that it's only important as much as it influences quantitative data. If qualitative data is completely separate and apart from quantitative data, then you don't have any measurement for how important that qualitative data is. If you hear everybody in our company went from being pressed and sad about coming to work every day to being extremely ecstatic about coming to work every day, but at the same time, we went from being profitable to making no money, you're going to have to look and say,
broke company.
Right. We're going to have to look and say, how much money did we spend on making those employees happy? And can we get a similar result with spending a little bit less money so that we can stay in business? Because they're going to be real sad when they ain't got no jobs.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so many people don't understand. So what I say with that is, those are opportunities for people that are not in operations, that don't do sales, that don't bring money into the business, to actually make their check, right? To argue for a bigger check, to argue for, if you can show how the work that you're doing is actually making the company money, you can ask for a bigger piece of the pie. And that's little sawdust in your everyday, right? That's how you can get promoted. That's how you can get bonuses. That's how you can get more flexible work schedules. That's how you can get all of those types of things if you can start speaking the language of the decision makers, right? So whether you're an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, these things fly.
I imagine that is probably an easy sell when you're presenting it to companies, right? Where, you may get in, well, hey, I want to work with leadership, and leadership's like, yes, this is for us selfishly, right? This is going, and then you're able to go, I think I've got another program, right? That's the continuity opportunity. That's the subscription model, but in a corporate setting, right? And I just recently saw a podcast where the person was saying she lets her husband handle that one-on-one conversation with people, but that shows, hey, your folks are saying they love this, so you definitely want us back, right? When you are able to see, we're working with the leaders, but let me show you how we can engage and show quantification of how that engagement is working and helping your P&L and your bottom line. All right, would you be interested in something like that? So let's see if I get this right. I can get a happy employee from what you're going to show them and teach them, and I can get a better bottom line. Yes. That to me would be, yeah, come on in, Rob. Bring your company with you. To me, I don't know. Maybe it's too easy because I see it.
That's exactly how it works. And ultimately, right, the hard part, I think, and this is what I've been cracking a nut on in my space, the hard part about it is, and this is why a lot of people don't do it, you have to connect so many dots, right? I was just having a conversation with the HR director, same company, the North American HR director, right? So he's it's a global company, and he's actually in charge of HR for not just North America, but North America and South America, right? And so in that space, one of the things that he's doing is, like, they're always fighting the fight. HR is always fighting the fight of trying to explain why this stuff is important to operations, to upper management, because upper management is looking at P&Ls. Upper management is looking at the things that they need to get done, and looking at the profitability or the expense of whatever they're talking about. So I was explaining to him, I'm like, the studies are all out there. Like, you have the data, it's out there, right? And again, ChatGPT, I've been hitting people to it. I'm like, yeah, people talk about it. Yes, you don't want to use ChatGPT as a research source that you're quoting from.
Right.
But ChatGPT is amazing for telling you whether stuff exists, and then you can go and get the actual source documents and pull from it.
Exactly.
So
Give me the source. I asked that once. Give me the
yeah,
source documents
yeah,
for what you just mentioned. Bam,
exactly.
I'm going to
I do
those.
it all the time. Like, one of the biggest queries that I'll ask is, give me 3 studies that show X. And then they'll go, "Ooh, here's a study from so-and-so that says this. Here's a study from so-and-so that says that. Here's a study from so-and-so that says that." Now I've got the source material. I can go look up the study. I can go find out. I can even ask ChatGPT, give me the site for this source. Give me the
Exactly.
site for that source. Give me the site
That's
for
the
that source.
productivity hack.
Exactly, right? But the key is, I did it, and I remember I was working with the team, because helping people to figure out how to get this data information. And I was like, they had a 4-minute presentation. I had the question of, where is this data? I went to ChatGPT, typed in the question while I'm listening to the presentation, got the data before they finished their presentation, and was able to talk to them and be like, look, I was able to find the research that you're missing in the time it took you to tell, and it was a 4-minute presentation, right? In the
And
time it took you to do this, I was able to find what you needed. So don't rush or don't shy away from it because you can't, quote unquote, find it. You got to know where to look. Now, I will give the disclaimer. I'm a lawyer. Part of our training is that we're trained to go find information. That's kind of what lawyers do. But even if it takes you 10 times as long as it took me, that's 40 minutes to get the data that you need to make this thing work. Right? That's not an exorbitant amount of time. But the big key with it is, in those studies, in those statistics, what it also has for you is it has the opportunity for you to connect the dots. Because what we know, we've read the books, we know that profitability is connected to productivity. That's the basic idea, right? Productivity is a cost center because you have to pay people for their labor. The more you can get as far as earnings from the labor cost that you have, that's where your profitability comes from, right? Simple, basic business economics. But then people say, well, what goes into productivity? Aha, that's where the dots need to be connected.
That's it.
Engagement, empowerment, motivation, right? All of those qualitatives that you can measure are directly correlated to productivity. And what you do is you use productivity as your proxy. As you see those things go up, you should see productivity going up. If you don't see productivity going up, you know that there's something going wrong. You know that there's something messed up. But if you do see productivity going up and you see those things going up, you can directly connect the work that you're doing over here to the productivity increases, to the profitability increases.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Right?
tell you, that to me, when you're talking, sometimes I just hear landing pages, right? Marketing landing pages. So if I'm you, right, and you all listening, here's a nugget get ready to drop. You got your satchel? Just saying, when you came to this workshop, you come to these every week and you listen to us. You said, no, it's not a podcast. This is a workshop. These devs are rocking it out. If profit, I can imagine a headline. If profits are tied to productivity, what is leadership doing? Right. And then that question provokes, what is leadership doing? And then that's what your company does, is make sure that your leadership can bolt on those two. Right. And then when you start hammering away at, well, leadership is going to be the one that determines, am I doing the things from a productivity standpoint that drives the other? I see it as a big old 360 circle that you could probably create a nice workshop around, right? A nice, I come into your company and we're going to be talking about how profits are obviously tied to productivity, right? Thank you, Captain Obvious. But that leadership is at the center of it all. Because I think, Rob, and this is when I wanted to call you up in the middle of the week and says, man, here's how you can leverage the ideal of ChatGPT and the euphoria people are feeling, believing that they could just peel off people now, how you can tie it back to, no, leadership is at the center of it all. Whether you have AI or whatever, AI and leadership, what happens next? Workshop, right? That you come in, you're charging your 10, 15, 20, 30, $40,000 to help them deal with. Because people are going to go, I don't need you. until they realize, yeah, but who's rowing this boat?
Exactly.
I done threw the rowers overboard and all the people. And now it's just you sitting in a boat with AI. AI is going, I have no arms.
Right.
So
I can write you a great paper.
So that becomes, I believe, the linchpin moment, right? And I've been talking with a lot of people about this. You know, I've been saying I've got a guy that's in the diversity space. And so I sent him a little letter. I says, is there inherent biases in what ChatGPT will be spitting out? If people are going to be leaning on it, leveraging it, does it also bring in inherent biases? Why? Because people, blah, 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 right? I says, you should be all over this. As a DEI professional, this is a narrative that you can get ahead of and be tops in your field in, you know, a week of a deep dive. And then just start rocking out papers, blah, 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 right? Watching what it does. So I sent him a specific piece of information that talks about it. Is ChatGPT racist? Is it this? I'd be asking all kinds of questions, doing small papers on, getting into organizations and saying, if you're going to bring this in, remember, who gets peeled off could have an effect on how your company is viewed. You got technology, but yet all of a sudden, more diverse folks are being let go, blah, 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 right?
But one of the biggest things about AI and all the rest of it is it doesn't understand nuance.
There it is. If it doesn't understand nuance, you're going to want a strong leader that does.
Right.
Let me come in and train you up. My name is Rob. Right? So think about this, everyone, as you're listening to this. As a result of being in the business, what is the sawdust of having interaction with a ChatGPT or an AI, whatever, because there's multiple ones that are going to be coming out. What will be peeled off from that? Right? There's everyone is on the side of 75. I heard this the other day from an ad, actually. The guy says, hey, 75 million jobs are going to be lost as a result of AI, ChatGPT type things. 75 million. Right?
And that, just to give everybody an idea, that's out of 160 million. Because that's what full employment is in the United States.
If that's the case, what could you, as a result of that, be building, be creating? What is your space? How can you affect that? I mean, because ChatGPT and a lot of these other AIs, man, they're being sued left and right. Intellectual property, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, there's going to be all types of
information come from. Where are you at on this?
And something that's really interesting with it, again, there's a lot of people that are worried about the job being lost and all the rest of that. But here's the thing that you always want to look at. If you're good at your job, you should be able to lead other people doing your job. Leading other people or leading machines doing your job is still a wage that is extremely important.
Another piece of gold. Did y'all hear that? Rob don't even know what he's doing. He's just, this sawdust is coming off of his stuff. Y'all hear that? If you're good at your job, you should be able to lead. Say that again, Rob. You should be able to lead people.
Job, the next step is you leading people to do your job. And it doesn't matter whether you're leading people or machines, they still need leadership.
Did y'all hear that?
Because leader's job is to work in that nuance. It's to understand where do we go left, where do we go right, and to take all the information in and to make an educated, calculated decision.
Okay. That's a framework, right? And this is what, when I was watching that podcast, we talked about off air and how she says she'll come up with this framework and then she'll go and IP it, right? I thought Rob is going to, just, kill this, right? I hate to use violent terms, y'all, but he's going to leverage the heck out of this, or he should. Once you read, you take the time
once I watch
to watch the episode and get fired up. How she went from 15 people coming to her thing to making 2.8 million, Rob, 2.8 million or 2.6 million on 210 people coming to her workshop. My ears perked up. Now I was watching it and I was enjoying her because she's got a great personality and all that, right?
Mhm.
100 and how many people? 150 people came live. Another 66 or something like that came virtually. But
Mhm.
with her upsells,
Mhm.
two, what was it? 2.6 or
2.6.
2.6 million. Now everybody quits their job at that point. I
That's
think that's the
way
point. She said her
more.
husband came on and he was like, okay, you
Yeah.
know,
All right. I'm good.
show me how I'm gonna get paid and all that kind of stuff. And I'm gonna leave my little job. But that's it, man. Right. And I started doing the math on that. I was like, wait a minute.
That's 10,000 a person.
So yeah, about 10,000. But if it's good information, right? Think about only 150 people. Now she's niched
Mhm.
down. She's done some things. She's been in the game, blah, blah, blah. That's
Mhm.
irrespective of that. Right.
Mhm.
But the point is, that's what's possible.
Yeah.
The title of this podcast did not lead with that. Maybe the guy didn't want to be hypey or anything like that, but I would have led with that.
Yeah.
Personally, right?
Yeah.
And we think about the sawdust of having done that event, right? That's what we're capturing. Now, when I started looking up what is this sawdust of your business, wasn't a lot of stuff out there, so there's maybe opportunity to start creating from that, right, with what I do. But I started thinking about, wait a minute, I've had OSB board before. That's sawdust, right? Then they make from sawdust. The people that were cutting stuff figured out, what are we going to do with all this waste? Well, think about this. Charcoal, what was that as a result of? That was Ford saying, what am I going to do with the rest of this wood? Who's this
Mhm.
guy, Firestone? Bring him in here. I hear you to figure out what we're going to do with all this excess wood.
Mhm. Mhm.
Charcoal briquettes.
Yep.
What?
Just
Wait, what?
pressed wood.
Just press wood. OSB, right? So you
Mhm.
create from what's left over. Start thinking about your business that way. What could we do with what we do, or what's left over from what we do?
Now,
Right?
there's one caveat that I will put out there because I think a lot of times people will get super excited and they're like, yes, I'm gonna go make money from the stuff that I do. And it's like, wait, pause.
It's work.
First, you have to do enough of what you do such that the accumulation of sawdust is actually something that you need to do something with. So many
Yeah.
people try to have 15 different ways of making money that are all making them a penny instead of finding one way of making money that's making you a dollar.
Mm.
Now you can then have that dollar and spin off 15 pennies. But notice that you got the
Dime,
dollar first.
dime drop, gold drop. Y'all listening? That was We're entrepreneurs. We got 15 things going. Come on, you got 16 probably.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you're
And
going, well, it's
and
not
that's the
peeling
reason
off
why I say it,
anything.
right? And nothing is growing. And that's literally my company 2 years ago.
We all been there, y'all.
We looked at it and said, we're struggling to do six figures, and it feels like I'm in 50 different directions. And we doing so many different things. And it
Yeah.
just felt like I was flushing cash down the drain, trying to get everything spun up, everything started up. And I said, you know what? Nope. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get really good at this one thing. And we're gonna hit this number. And once we hit this number, then we're gonna spin up another thing because we hit this number.
Yeah.
And but we're not just gonna spin up another thing, we're also going to double down on this thing to make that number big enough
Yeah.
that it covers what we spending on this number. So
That's the Ryan Moran approach, right? Now
exactly.
you have your
And
4 businesses doing this much a day, this much a
mhm,
year equals this, but concentrate on one.
concentrate on one first, get it to where it's going. And so that was the whole thing. We pushed and we worked and we got our consulting business to basically double. And that is now what's paying for getting the speaking stuff up and running and increasing our prices. And we've increased prices and speaking fourfold
Yeah.
since then. And
Yeah.
we're getting stuff running there. And then with the Thriving in Chaos and the program, and we got a marketing team that's doing all of this work over here. That all came from the overage, the sawdust, if you would, from doubling the consulting business.
Hey, y'all. You came to the workshop and you says, I just want to listen to the 2 Business Guys Mastermind once again, and you got some gold, right? Everyone should be picking it up. I may even have to run ads to this particular episode because it's that important. Right now, We don't usually do this, but we're going to say if you need additional help, we can help you. You see kind of what we do, right? How we do it. We're going to show you where your sawdust is. We're going to show you how to monetize it, package it, and then put it out there.
And most importantly, we're going to show you what the obstacles are that you don't see, which is why you're not doing what you know you're supposed to be doing.
That right there, I think, is one of the key things. I mean, I can probably spin up a business a day. Simply, you know, I remember Ty Lopez one day said that. He was like, I'm going to, me and my partner, Alex, are going to spin up a business a day. And I'm like, what? This dude is drinking. Right. And then, but you start thinking about how that's possible given what we have available to us. Right. But the main thing is, do you have that main thing, that from that main thing, stuff is dropping off?
Exactly.
In other words, in a good way, right? Peeling off. Right. If you shake the tree, you got the good apples, right? But then some fell to the floor.
Right. That's
right.
What gives
Who's
you the
picking
runway.
Those up?
Right. That's what gives you the runway to focus on the other stuff. I think that's what so many business owners get stuck in. They get stuck in this mode where everything has to work. Right. And I remember when I was in law school, we were learning, I took this class on representing entrepreneurial startup. And what we were learning about was venture capital and how VC firms work and what the whole process is from start to finish in an entrepreneurial endeavor. And one of the interesting things that happened, we had a venture capitalist come in, and he was kind of basically explaining the business. And I've heard this from a number of other people since then, right? They plan for third, right? That's their whole thing. They break everything down into thirds. 1/3 of the businesses that they invest in will completely go bankrupt, not make a dime. 1/3 of the businesses that they invest in will break even. But then 1/3 of the businesses that they invest in will go
I knew you were going with it. That's why I'm chuckling. 1/3 is going to pay for everything else.
Pays for everything else. And that's the key. And so that's the numbers that they're paying attention to in their heads. And so many entrepreneurs get started not realizing that they got to get that 1/3 that's paying for everything else before they go there, before you have earned the right to start dibbling and dabbling in other stuff. Now, maybe that 1/3 is your job. If you're making a lot of money, like the young lady we were just talking about, she was an attorney in this podcast. She was an attorney. She was making $300,000 a year. That was her 1/3
right,
that allowed her to do this stuff over here. Plus, her husband is like a CFO, or not a CFO, but an accountant, and he was making good money. So that was her 1/3, right? Like, be aware of some of these studies, because again, Randy knows the story. I told y'all the story before. I got into this entrepreneurship endeavor, this business that I built, and that was the thing that I wasn't paying attention to. I disregarded the 1/3 rule. I disregarded the idea that I have to have something over here that is a main thing that is taking care of all the rest of this type of stuff. And in that space, it was extremely difficult. I still say that we probably lost 2 to 3 years off of our growth, because I was having to take any and everything that came, because I needed to put food on the table.
Yeah.
And I'm working part-time jobs, I'm ship shopping, I'm doing all that type of stuff, and trying to run my business, and all of these things at the same time, because I didn't pay attention. It's funny because I had a mentor in that moment. One of the first guys I work with, he's about 2 years ahead of me in business. He does consulting in manufacturing space. And he told me, now this is 6 months in, so I already messed up, so I can't fix it. But he was like, yeah, the advice I got was, have your job, start building a couple of things here, and then once your side gig, it was the basic structure. Build it till it's sustainable. Now you can do something else. Now you can do something different. And that takes discipline. And so just be aware that, like, this stuff that we're talking about is not about, get rich quick, or, oh my God, you can just go find, riches everywhere and you're just going to be able to monetize them quickly. No, these things are going to take 3 months, 6 months, a year to monetize and to get going, because there's a learning curve for every one of these things. Make sure you're doing the work to build that foundation. Once you have a strong foundation, you put a room up, tear a room down, put another room up. You can do a whole bunch of different stuff. But if you don't have a strong foundation, all of that stuff comes crashing down, even if the room that you built is magnificent. No foundation, the room goes away. So be aware of making that foundation. Get your one thing, get your business to the point where it's taking care of you. You ain't got to be living lavish, but just make sure that you ain't worried about where your next meal coming from. Now you can start saying, okay, how much money does it take to get this thing spun up? And how much money am I willing to invest with no return to try this thing?
Yeah. And when Rob and I are doing this stuff and you start looking at the spreadsheet that we roll out and we say, this is your pathway, right? Now we typically call pathway to 100K, but that pathway to 100K a week, a month, a year, a day, we show you the pathway and it's there. Hey, this is what you have to do. Then the question becomes, will you do it? Will someone else do it for you?
Right. And what's going to get in your way?
You're hearing it, the how, that's you, if you decide, the who, someone else, or the what. Now, this is stuff that we bring because we work with, I'm a software junkie. So I always are bringing some kind of, do it with the software. And then someone says, well, who's going to run the software? Yeah. Get a who to run the software. Right. And then you, in essence, become the advisor to your company so that you can do your superpower stuff best. This is what I was telling the guy in Seattle. Your superpower is creation because it boom just comes to you. Right. Or it comes as a result of the business that you work that you do. It's just there. Right. Your sawdust, if you will, is creating. And then he told me something very key. I says, how are you going about creating this content? And he says, oh man, my mind works faster than my fingers. So you know what I do? I says, stop using your fingers. What do you mean? Right. And then we go into it. Now that's a little bit of the secret sauce, but we look at the constraints to where you are and ask, how could I remove those constraints? Oftentimes we're working so much, right? We're on that wheel. We don't realize, wait a minute, this wheel ain't making nothing but me tired. But if we connect something that maybe lights up or something else, now that wheel, as I move it, is doing something for me. And then maybe I can bank some of that energy and then sell it back to anyway, y'all see where I'm going with this, right? Now the hamster is actually,
right?
We're making money for. So that becomes the sawdust of your business, y'all. Take a look at what you're doing. In my on the ground business, one of the things, and it's a juice business, y'all. So I started looking at the pulp. I was like, what are we doing with this pulp? Nothing, throwing it out. What? It says, can we create from that? Yes,
you can.
Right now,
and you don't
here's
even,
the
and
difference.
You don't even have to create. You can just go find the people that are already creating, because there's fruit pulp bars galore in this new healthy craze and all the rest of this type of stuff. I just got some stuff
to mess with their stuff. That's the key.
Exactly.
Right. And I tell you, it's one of those unsexy business moments. I was listening to another podcast and the guy got on there and he says, and this is where he dropped that term, the sawdust. And I was like, I've heard that term before. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm already doing that stuff. I'm already showing people how to take whatever they do and monetize your life, because whatever you're doing is, you're going about your day. Let's find a way to monetize it. Right. In other words, grab the sawdust. I just didn't say it that way. And he says, there's so many things that are happening in your business. Right. And I thought, yes. He says, I wonder what would happen if. So he went on this whole journey and it got me thinking, yeah, what would happen if? And now take a look at all of your, what would happen if you captured this, and this. Right. Now we show you how to do that because, we know how to bring in frameworks and all this stuff.
Yeah,
right?
There's a process. But you got to do it effectively. You got to do it efficiently. Otherwise, all of your profit is eaten up in your process.
And then like Rob talks about, you do it with leadership. Right? Who's leading that kind of thinking? Who's engaging the troops to say, not only do we know it can happen, but let's make it happen.
Exactly.
Right.
And how are you getting them to make it happen? I just did the activity. I was doing a workshop yesterday, and we just did an activity. I do it all the time. It's called a ball toss activity, right? And the cool part about it is about 15 people.
Was it called boss talk?
The ball toss. So
ball toss. Okay.
Yep. So we toss the ball around. There's a couple of things to it. But the basic point is the event starts, and they're giving the idea, you're in a company, this is your job, this is your process, you have to do it, you learn how to do it. They start off, it takes them 55 seconds to get everything done in the process. Now, the amazing part of this drill, and it's a leadership thing that I teach a bunch of people, they are able within 4 rounds, where I don't give any suggestions on how to solve the problem, present them with the facts, I present them with the problem, I present them with the expectation. The team works together and they're able to solve the problem. We go from 55 seconds. This is the last one. So sometimes it takes people a minute and a half. Sometimes it takes, right, depending on what it is. But invariably, they went from 55 seconds to a time of 3 seconds. Same process over about 4 rounds. And they did all of the work. That's what the power of leadership is. Being able to give clarity on the mission and then unleashing the talents of your team to make things happen. And I think so often when people think about leadership, they think about people doing, they think about people being in front. And if there's one thing I can help y'all to leave with when you're thinking about this whole Sawdust model, especially if you lead a team, you don't have to be the one figuring it all out. You don't have to be the one making it all happen. Right? Randy talks about it, and it's a phenomenal book if you haven't read it. Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Who, not how. You don't have to be the one to figure everything out. There are people that are in your circle. There are people that you know. There are people that you can work with that can tell you and do it for you better than you would ever be able to think about figuring it out or doing it. You just got to be willing to make what you need known.
Make what you need known. That's the Ryan Levesque ask, open up your mouth. What do you need? And then let someone say, oh, I know someone that can do that. Right. I lead with that a lot. And even though I'm a person that loves to put their hands in stuff, right? Like, hey, I want to do this. Then I say, well, who else could do this for me? I may do it myself just for, personal satisfaction. And then I go, who could do this more efficiently? Who could do this faster? Who could do this with better skill? And then I go find me a who, right? And if I can't find a who, I'm going, well, what could do this? Eventually, I'm asking the what question anyway, because that peels off so many costs. I'm going to find out, how can I concretize this? How can I reduce this? How can I miniaturize this into a software approach, right? That's reasonable in my pocket. And then
I'm gonna just keep pushing you to,
stuff.
And I'm gonna just keep pushing you to ask that in a who and make somebody else figure that out.
There it is. Right. Hey, I need you to do this. Right. That's
Right.
your researcher.
I want this to be done at this cost in my pocket and at this quality level.
Maybe I'll ask ChatGPT.
Knows how to do
Chat,
that?
I need to do this at this. How can I do it? Go.
There you go. Who can I find that can do it?
Yes. That is going to be and I've done videos on this, y'all, on my personal channel, right? Talking about that thing. I went through and says, if I were this prolific author who's dead, whether it was, I said, write in the style of Agatha Christie, right? I write in the style of blah, 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 right? And I says, now be inspired by that. I says, write a rap song using these words. Bam. Right. And you see what comes out and you go, OMG. That's the mashup opportunity. That is the bringing stuff together. That is how you're using the sawdust, if you will, of what other people have done to create for yourself.
There you go.
All right, y'all. That's the workshop. Any questions on that stuff, hit in the description field. I'm going to leave all the information to get to us. If you want to hire us or whatever it is, I'm creating landing pages right now that'll allow you to jump into stuff that we do. Rob and I do stuff individually and we do stuff together, right? So whatever you want, let's jump into it. Put some notes in the comment section if you want. Say, hey, look, this is how it helped me. Let us know how the stuff that we talk about has helped your business, because we want to put you front and center. Maybe we'll get you in the workshop and put you on the podcast to show us and show people that are listening how you did it from what you learned. Right? Because I'm building this model, man, that, learn, create, get paid. Learn, create, get paid. You learn it by the second half of the day, you're creating, and by night, you're getting paid. More to come. More to come, y'all. All right, that's it. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, everybody. Have a great one.